Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the 700 Club. We've got some news today, but first I want to correct something that not we've done, but is in the Wall Street Journal front page headline that Mueller had contacted the Deutsche Bank in Germany to request data about President Trump's business dealing. Our Jay Sekulow has checked it out. He's the attorney now for Trump. And he said it's absolutely false. There is no substance for it. The general counsel has not made such a request. Deutsche Bank said they never got one, but there was some small paper in Germany that ran the story, and it's been played over here, and it is totally erroneous. So I just want to start the day with that. And if you get the journal, in which I do very faithfully and read it, the headline this morning said that Mueller was investigating the Trump business dealings through Deutsche Bank. Wrong. Absolutely didn't happen. Okay, other presidents have promised it, but only President Trump is actually doing it. They're going to move the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And the president is expecting to announce that the U.S. will recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. It is the capital. Tel Aviv is not the capital. It's always been Jerusalem. This is a city that David took by conquest, a couple thousand years ago, and it's still the eternal capital of Israel. And so Trump is recognizing it despite our Arab friends, the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Turks, and others threatening serious repercussions if we make that move. Wendy.
That's right, Pat. The president's move is being fiercely criticized by other countries, and it could lead to violent protests. But the White House is moving ahead. Jenna Browder brings us the story from Washington.
Senior White House officials say the move is based on the recognition of reality because of the fact that Jerusalem has been Israel's seat of power for the last 7 decades. CBN's David Brody asked about the move at Tuesday's White House press briefing.
David?
Yeah, Sarah, can you tell me a little bit about the process and timing as how the president got to the potential Jerusalem announcement tomorrow? Can we have somewhat of a backstory on that to the degree that you can at this point?
I can tell you that it was a very thoughtful interagency process.
Quick follow-up, and evangelicals' role in this, how crucial has that been in terms of the Faith Advisory Council?
Look, the president wanted to make the decision that was the best decision for the United States.
It's a decision evangelicals applaud, that a promise Trump made to them on the campaign trail.
What about this whole embassy question? This idea that the embassies in Tel Aviv, and I know Cruz and Rubio, they have legislation. What's that? Yeah, they want it in Jerusalem. What do you think about that?
I am for that 100%. We are for that 100%. They are our best ally in the Middle East, and they've really been loyal to us. We have not been loyal to them.
The news is already sparking opposition in parts of the Middle East, with Turkey threatening to cut ties to Israel, Saudi Arabia speaking out against the move, and the Palestinians calling for 3 days of rage. As a result, the U.S. military has placed troops on alert. The Palestinians want East Jerusalem as their capital, and Trump declaring Jerusalem as the capital destroys that hope. So the move could threaten peace efforts between the Israelis and the Palestinians. On the streets of Jerusalem, CBN News found overwhelming support for the new approach, even if it does cause major problems.
President Trump is a very good man. He loves Israel, and I love him.
I think it's time to make some changes.
Here in Jerusalem at this Jerusalem Post diplomatic conference, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did not address the issue of moving the U.S. Embassy. But 2 Israeli officials called it an historic day and a fulfillment of destiny.
The administration still hasn't decided where the U.S. Embassy will be built in Jerusalem and acknowledge it could take years to complete the move. Even so, the days of kicking the can down the road appear to be over. White House officials believe the United States' position of ambiguity on Jerusalem and the embassy hasn't helped to advance the prospect of peace. They think that taking it off the negotiation table will help both sides come to an agreement on bigger issues that keep them apart. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Jenna, well, with us now from Washington is Florida Congressman Ron DeSantis. He's chairman of the National Security Subcommittee, and he's been a leader in Congress on encouraging President Trump to move the embassy to Jerusalem. And Congressman, we welcome you to the 700 Club. How much pushback you think we're going to get from our friends and enemies because of this move? You think it's as serious as they say?
Well, you know, Pat, I've always believed, I mean, one, we got to do the right thing regardless of the consequences. It's a historical fact, as you pointed out. Go back thousands of years. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. This year actually celebrates the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem after the Six-Day War in 1967. So I think this is the perfect time to do this and do what many presidents have promised. Here's the thing with a lot of the Arab countries. Their issue is really not the Palestinian Arabs at this point. Their main issue is they're worried about Iran and Iran going nuclear. And they have a partner in President Trump. They have a partner in Prime Minister Netanyahu who shares that outlook and wants to put Iran back in the box. So I don't think the Saudis and the Emiratis and some of these countries are going to jeopardize the alliance with the United States vis-a-vis Iran simply because we're recognizing Jerusalem as the capital, which, by the way, has been in our law for over 20 years.
Would you like to discuss that? The Congress passed a law that our embassy should indeed be moved to Jerusalem, but the State Department held it up. What was the story about that? You want to address that?
Sure. In '95, Congress overwhelmingly passed the Jerusalem Embassy Act, which declared Israel or Jerusalem to be the capital of Israel and said our embassy should be relocated there. Now, it included a provision in there where every 6 months a president could waive the requirements if it was in the national security interest of the United States to do so. And every president, Clinton, Bush, Obama, have been signing waivers every 6 months saying we can't move the embassy because it'll harm our national security, even though all of them promised to move it. So now President Trump is in a situation where he did sign a waiver in May to get us to this point. But I think with his recognition of Jerusalem, he may even sign the waiver for 6 more months. But I think he's saying we're recognizing Jerusalem and we're going to start moving this thing. So be ready. And I think that that's exactly the right approach. The interesting thing, though, is some of the partisanship you're hearing already, Pat, where senators who voted as recently as this summer to recognize Israel as the capital, or Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, now they're criticizing Trump for announcing it.
There's an action that's taken place, I understand, in the House yesterday, having to do with the fact that the Palestinians are actually paying money for the killing of some of our soldiers, one soldier and other fighters for Israel. And our money is being used for that, and this was a move to stop that. Would you like to address that? Were you involved in voting on that?
No, absolutely. The Taylor Force Act. Think about what they're saying. It ties in with the embassy, I think, because people say you can't move the embassy because that will jeopardize the peace process. What kind of peace process do you have when Palestinian Arabs will pay salaries and pensions to the families of members who murder Israelis? Not only that, but they name streets after these terrorists. They name sports stadiums after them. And so there's something really sick going on with Palestinian Arab society. And the last thing we should be doing is having the American taxpayer underwrite that. So this will defund that. I think it should have been done long ago, but finally we're doing it. Obama would have vetoed it, but President Trump will sign this bill.
You know, the Palestinian, the PLO and the Palestinian Authority, Hamas has got a big piece of the control of the Palestinians. Did you think they're a legitimate partner for peace for the Israelis?
Of course not. I mean, they want Israel's destruction. And even the PLO, Pat, you go back, the PLO was founded in 1964, Palestine Liberation Organization. That was before the Six-Day War. So you still had the Jordanians occupying the West Bank. What were they saying to liberate? They wanted to liberate all of the area and not have any Jews anywhere. That is how that organization was founded. And they've never to this day, whether it's Fatah or Hamas, recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. Their interest in any negotiations is to get to a point where you could have a stepping stone to Israel's destruction, not to recognize the Jewish state's right to exist in perpetuity.
Should the United States be giving them any money? I mean, money goes to the UN gives them money, and I don't know if we're giving direct aid to them or not, but they're not really a worthy recipient of our aid, are they?
Well, think about, we send money for some of the education, but if you look at the textbooks that the Palestinian Arabs are using. The maps in their textbooks do not have Israel at all on any of the maps. They basically instill incitement. They're very negative about Jews and Christians, and that's something that the American taxpayer underwrites. Also through the United Nations with the UNRWA organization. When you had the Gaza war a couple years ago, a lot of these rockets were just mysteriously coming out of these UNRWA schools. And it's just, how does that end up happening? If you're a refugee organization trying to do right, how are you letting Hamas get in there and use your schools to launch attacks against Israelis? So I think this tax dollars that's been going over there, I think it's been counterproductive. And if we get tough on the tax dollars, recognize Jerusalem, that's sending a clear signal to the Palestinian Arabs that we're not going to reward them for bad behavior any longer.
Congressman, I appreciate your intelligence and your knowledge of this area. You're perhaps one of the most knowledgeable we've had the privilege of talking to. Thanks for being with us.
God bless. Thank you.
Congressman DeSantis, isn't that interesting?
He really knows his stuff on Israel.
Well, you know, that UNRWA it's the United Nations Public Works Administration. They have kept the myth alive that these people one day are going to have a return, that they will get the property that they lost during the war in '48. And it is a myth, and the UN keeps funding it over and over again, and it has one purpose: to stir up trouble against Israel. And, you know, we give money to the UN. I think it's time we start tell the UN, it's been fun, guys, but we're not going to give you any more money.
Congressman mentioned, you know, that 50 years since the Six-Day War when they regained control of Jerusalem, and it's now we're celebrating 70 years of Israel being in existence. And I just think those numbers perhaps are not a coincidence. God likes to do things on his clock, and right. He seems to like numbers. But it's going to be an exciting day, and we need to pray for Israel.
It really will, and we need to pray for our people, because there could be attacks on our embassies, and you know we're putting Marine guards and we're beefing up security at our embassies because of the possibility.